morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's AMA. It's a crazy week, right? It looks like markets are on fire. A lot of just madness in the space. But actually on the home front, in terms of the development side, we have some pretty nice developments to see this week. Every week we do a developer update where we cover the latest in terms of what developers and projects across the ecosystem are working on. And we have a lot to look forward to. I know that probably the hottest topic this week on that front is Rosenbridge. MHS and team have been doing some private testing. I believe there's 9 watchers and 10 guards online right now. Looks like the plan is to test that for at least a few days, see if they can break anything, test and improve, and then actually open up a public test, which will be great. And those of you out there that are interested in participating, please hop onto that. Now, I'm solo today. Dan is somewhere in the air. I believe he's flying to Dubai at the moment. Alex is actually in Dubai at the moment as well. So I'm here at 6 a.m. going solo, talking to you guys. Fun. So let's get into the questions. I think it's definitely a good day to engage the community and talk about what's going on and, well, what we can do moving forward. So first thing is Augustus Kent. Can you please summarize why the markets are doing what they are doing and why is Ergo being affected by it? So this year has been a year where we have continually, let's say, witnessed and kind of been reinforced why decentralization is important, right? The long and short of it is you have this character that had a proprietary trading firm and also had an exchange. And part of how an exchange works is if you look at, let's say, a wallet on an exchange, right? The exchange has custody of that. They do keep kind of a record of account, somewhat similar to, I guess, how you would look at a bank, where, they have a registry of all of the different actors and their holdings in that one wallet, right? And so that gives them a tremendous amount of power. And it is a trusted environment that, in terms of TradeFi and, well, in this case, the exchange itself, it seems, you have to ask, are they somebody that, basically is a good custodial actor in terms of trust? And in this case, it appears not to be the case, right? So what does that mean? It probably means that they were playing around with users' deposits, probably trading them in a way that really was not wise. They also had a lot of funny business in terms of what was collateralizing basically loans they were taking, meaning, they had this token FTT, which wasn't so liquid. And there was huge amounts that basically were kind of held by them and other counterparties. And what happens when you build a castle on sand? It fails, right? That is one nice thing about Ergo is, you can say, okay, well, what is it that actually gives Ergo, value beyond just, let's say, the technical capacities? It's proof of work, right? Proof of work is ultimately what backs Ergo, somewhat similar to Bitcoin, where you take the cost of production, and that kind of is the foundation of value on the network. In this case, it was a coin that they made. I don't even know what the use case of it was, but it seems like they were willing to go to partners and basically use it as collateral to get massive loans. Who's the counterparty on those loans? Probably not a wise idea, but what can you do? And now we have one of the largest exchanges in the space that, looks like is potentially going to default, and retail is going to get wrecked. Ugly. It's an ugly situation. It's going to probably cause a lot of loss of faith, loss of trust in our industry, which, I really can't, I can't blame anybody for seeing this and saying, wow, that's pretty sketchy, because it is, right? It kind of, I don't know, it reminds me of like Lehman Brothers. What do you do when you kind of have a sketchy business? You put your name everywhere and people trust you, buy a stadium. So now we're in a situation where the big question has to do with counterparty risk and liquidation. And, from what I hear, now they're doing some funny business with stable coins, but it's 6 a.m. I just woke up. I can dig into that later today. So what are markets doing? They're basically trying to price risk that's unknown. The reason why it's unknown is because it's in a black box. When you have exchanges, you don't really have the ability to understand both the asset side or the liability side. And in this case, it's kind of, I don't know, I think post-mortem what we'll learn is there's a lot of obfuscation and hiding, how assets are moving. Hopefully, as this progresses and we kind of examine, what happened, how it happened, which, being this guy had the balls to go speak in front of Congress, I imagine there's going to be a pretty thorough post-mortem, let's say, investigation. We'll probably learn quite a bit in terms of how, let's say, the scheme on the back end was working. But the same is true with, Terra Luna. We did learn quite a bit about how things were being manipulated, right? It wasn't what was being sold to the public. Now, ultimately, in my opinion, the ideal is to create trustless environments, right? To where you can understand the assets that are in reserve, you can understand liabilities, you can see positions, you can understand risk, right? Because ultimately, when you're talking about these type of products, the market is both trying to price future growth and, whatever the implications of that are. And they're also trying to price risk, right? And when everything is basically black, there's huge, let's just say malpricing that can occur. And I think we're kind of seeing that. Now, what solves this? DeFi, first principles, open source code, transparency. These are things that at Ergo we've tried to talk about quite a lot, but the reality is most people get a little greedy, and so they take risks that they don't understand. And, in this case, it was, I don't want to say a pretty face because I've seen the guy, but, it was basically sold. This is a trusted person, right? And my recommendation to everybody in this space is what you really want is transparency, right? Don't trust anybody's face. Look at code. If you can't look at code, there are plenty of people that, openly review, talk about how things are structured. And ultimately, that is, in my opinion, the best way to protect yourself, because you can understand the assumptions of what you're getting into. I know that this character was sold as the next, I don't know what, Warren Buffett. Yeah, good marketing, I guess. Wonder how much FTX paid for all that, or if, it's wild, just wild to me. But anyway, stay safe out there, everybody. I've tried to encourage the community to always know your assumptions, right? Because the more you can know about your assumptions, the more you can understand risk. The more you can understand risk, the more you can protect yourself, right? And ideally, we're trying to build systems where things operate within a certain set of assumptions, right? Proof of work operates under a certain set of assumptions. DeFi in general, any framework is going to, let's say, be performant within a certain set of assumptions. And it's important to recognize that, because then, it gives a certain clarity to kind of the end user. So let's see what the community's got to say today. Let's see. Hi, Joe. What's the current state of decentralized IDs on Ergo? I'm stressing about government IDs popping up. Well, can you do something with DIDs? Sure. The Ergo Foundation tries to build open source frameworks and then pass that to the community, to developers, to actually commercialize and build, right? It's never been our goal to try to be like a commercial arm, right? What we want to do is we want to do research, development, and create a foundational mindshare that then other actors, other entities can potentially come up and build. Now, decentralized IDs, it's a fascinating topic, let's say. I do know that we are working, well, not we, but there's a project in the ecosystem called Ergo Names. That's kind of the first step in terms of creating some identifier that you can hold in your wallet and use. If you're talking about government IDs, then you get into a lot more complexity, right? And for me personally, I tend to think that if I were building on Ergo, right, I would want to build in a way that really was more grassroots, because it potentially could avoid the legal complexity. That's a nice word. I was going to say something different, but the complexity of working with governments, right? We've seen a ton of projects that try to engage, let's say, in various governments across the world, and it's always extremely slow and tedious, and politics change, and you have geopolitical conflicts and all kinds of fun stuff that it's just painful to get locked in, right? I respect people that try to engage in, propose solutions. But I haven't seen anything that I would call very meaningful in terms of actual traction and adoption yet. There are certainly those out there that are trying, and I can tip my hat to that. But for me personally, if I were building a project that takes a lot more patience, time, and money, then I would want to throw at a problem. Is Dan and Alex meeting CZ in Dubai? Not that I'm aware of. I know that Alex has been in Dubai for about a week. I've really been pushing him to take a couple days and get to the beach and enjoy life, unplug a little bit. I have not seen a picture proof of beach, but we'll see. I know that he's also working with Anastasia, which is our treasurer. We may be in the process of rotating the jurisdiction of the Ergo Foundation from Singapore to Dubai because of simply a favorable jurisdiction. So that is something that the Ergo Foundation is actively exploring, and that's more the purpose of the trip. And yeah, I'll get an update on that probably later today. But that's something that I think could be good for us. Dubai tends to be a little bit more neutral as a jurisdiction, and because we actually do have a globally distributed team, geopolitics, well, make things a little bit messy, let's say. All right. Terry Moore is asking Spectrum DEX integration with Cardano. You'd have to ask the team, right? I am not on the Ergo DEX or Spectrum DEX team. I do talk with, Ilya and Yasha and Gaza, on a regular basis. I know that's something that they're working on. I believe they have open source testnet going on. I'm excited to see that come out. I definitely think it will help, the use case of Rosen specifically as that rolls out. But that's something that you simply want to make sure it's well battle tested before you take it to the public mainnet. And it looks like they're doing what's needed to try to get in and break things and patch the user experience and just prepare for that launch. When exactly it is, I don't know. To be honest, I'm not sure if they know at this point. That can sometimes be the case with testing. When you get into software development and kind of the end stage where you've built this airplane and now you need to see if it flies and, get out all of the kinks, that's somewhat of an unknown. So we often get into this soon mentality. I think that it's a good thing in a way to make sure that your product is flight ready before, it takes off. If not, that could be catastrophic. So I know there's always a certain pressure that's put on developers to, get to market. And my recommendation to teams is you have to ignore that because, even if people want to take off a little bit sooner, if the plane doesn't work, that's a bigger issue, right? Another question from Terry Moore. Can we get a fiat on-ramp wallet integration and when Ledger? So usually when you have a fiat on-ramp in crypto, it goes one of two ways. One way is with a external partner, such as an exchange. You can also look at something like Circle, where, basically the infrastructure is more your bank account to Circle, and then Circle will give you some kind of on-chain credit. The downside to that is you usually need some mechanism to be able to blacklist or censor transactions, freeze things. If someone wants to have that type of integration on Ergo, they're welcome to try to build that, right? It's an open ecosystem. Personally, I'm not the hugest fan of that for personal reasons, but it's an open ecosystem. My opinion doesn't matter, so anybody can do that. When Ledger is the second, I talk to the Ledger team all the time. I'm, just as annoyed as everybody else. Unfortunately, they've had a bit of a rough time. I know right now they're polishing the UI for Ledger. They've optimized it quite a bit to where, I think you can now transfer more tokens in one deposit. But yeah, I'll have to keep bothering you, the Tesseract team, and see if they can get that out. And to some degree, we get back to the plane analogy, which I don't know. It's been let's just say late, right? We're way past term in terms of when this should have been done. But we are where we are. So the best thing to do is create a confident solution and get it out for people, especially with this FTX stuff. We do have the cold wallet feature that is built on mobile devices. We also do have some ability to sideload ledger on Nautilus. And we also have the ability to take Erg, put it on Waves Exchange, and use the ledger feature there as a native asset on Waves Exchange. But the ideal is to just get it done. So I'll keep bothering them. You know, nothing I can really say that is a good excuse in terms of why that isn't finished yet. It should have been, but it hasn't. All right, Yanis, what is missing from Ergo to make people take notice? Probably exchange access, right? I think we actually do have a tremendous amount of material out there, but market access is still something that we need to work on. And that's something that we'll grow into, you know, in terms of our actual technology and position in the space. I think we're pretty uniquely positioned to grow. We certainly have the ecosystem development coming together in terms of proof of work. We're kind of in a unique space, unique animal in terms of functionality and capability. But I would say the first thing that's missing is probably market access. And that's something that, you know, coming from a foundation with a limited budget and a pretty long runway in terms of development, you know, we've always had this question, okay, we can pay for it, and in which case we're going to kind of take from development funds, right? Or, you know, we fund development and that ultimately builds value and will assist us in opening doors. And that's been a balancing act. There's a ton of things in the space where, you know, I guess you can look at like extreme examples like, you know, Internet Computer was one from this last cycle that, you know, they just kind of bought their way into everything day one, right? And so they didn't really have a community or much technology or use case, but they were everywhere all at the same time and had a pretty powerful marketing machine behind it. And it failed. Ultimately, I think having that distribution throughout the mining community and a solid development community is where the real value is in these networks in terms of market access and marketing. There's been a lot of stuff that, you know, just makes me shake my head in terms of why anyone would want to play with it other than extreme volatility, but people want extreme volatility, I guess. So I do think that's something that we're aware of and we're working on. It's just a matter of saying, okay, slow organic growth where we have deep roots is just stronger over time. Let's see. Do you believe, due to the whole situation, Binance is the #1 exchange to work with? Or are you trying to stay away from them until things settle? I think that Binance is at least proven to be a lot more resilient, at least than FTX was, right? I'd be happy to work with them. You know, it's just a matter of cost, right? Depending on what their ask is and, you know, what our position is. Certainly, I'm always open to discuss business with exchanges like that. Do I think Binance is a bad actor? I don't know. You know, it's one of those things you get into a black box scenario. I can't tell you, in all honesty, what you know, they are doing on the back end. Nobody really can but them. In terms of exchanges, there are, you know, exchanges out there that I do think have been, let's say, better actors in terms of what they list or how they try to provide education or how they try to engage on the policy front. So it's not as though I can say exchange bad, because to some degree we are reliant on that framework at the moment. But I can say, you have to understand your assumptions. And when you don't have your keys, you don't have custody. And crypto is often, left on exchange, but in reality, it's a bearer asset, meaning if you have custody and the ability to sign, it's yours. So, what you have from an exchange is essentially an IOU from, let's say their separate ledger to what is yours in their wallet. So it's always good to try to take custody because it just gives you the best assumptions. All right, Windy Moon. Morning, Joe. How many more loss of trust incidents can the crypto space withstand? And how can we better differentiate ourselves, Ergo, from those dodgy centralized actors in the space? Okay, so first question, how many more incidents can we withstand? I have no idea. Honestly, it's one of those things where to some degree I have to scratch my head and say, how many times do people need to touch fire before they learn it is hot, right? I think some people will observe and kind of intuitively understand fire's hot, right? And that's the risk and we should be careful. Then you have other people that just, don't understand that, burn themselves once, lose their keys to something and they learn, and then I guess there are probably people that need repeated burns to learn, but that's a question for all humans, right? How, difficult or easy do you learn, right? Now, how can we differentiate ourselves from dodgy centralized actors? It's actually pretty simple in my opinion, but it's difficult because you have people coming into the space and their motivation is greed. Their motivation is not like, oh, it's self-custody and that comes with a certain responsibility and I need to understand my trust assumptions and protect myself, right? A lot of the time, the biggest motivator is greed. Like I think it's fair to just say that, right? There's a lot of people that come into crypto, they don't really understand the ethos or ethics or principles of why this technology exists. They just think Safe Moon is going to go to the moon because it's got moon in the title and also the word safe. So it should be safe that it moons, right? And there's a ton of that dodginess in the space. Now, can we say, okay, from a principled approach, what can people look at to try to understand their assumptions? Absolutely. And I think that's sadly lacking. We have a tremendous amount of YouTubers that are out there and TikTokers and whatever that, they run around and throw out big numbers and have an orgasm face and do a lot of emotional nonsense for excitement, right? And they're absolutely terrible educators. And I think ultimately that is the energy that's going to differentiate any person in the space that's, talking about cryptocurrency from a lot of the dodgy bullshit that goes on a regular basis, right? If I can educate someone, then maybe they'll learn fire is hot before, having to touch it, right? And that's what we need. I think that we have certainly tried, but, our visibility and, let's say, reach with that message is limited. But the reality is there are actually a fair amount of good actors in the space that do actively discuss this. They do actively try to teach people to understand their assumptions and quantify risk. But you also have this other crowd that's just like, hey, be greedy, follow me, and I'll take you to Mars, right? And it's sad. It's something I love the technology to some degree. I hate the space because, what does that do other than usually lead people right off a cliff? And usually the actor that is, kind of leading to the edge of the cliff doesn't go over the cliff. And then pretends that they're a saint in some sense. It's weird to watch. But if you want to differentiate yourself, I would say education is key. Next, we have Antonia Soto with a smile. Nice to see a smile in the morning. Augustus Kent says, the honesty and transparency that comes from Ergo is so refreshing. But then on top of that, you tell us not to trust you, to trust open source code. Yeah, basically, right? And I think that the reality is if a system is truly decentralized, I shouldn't matter, right? I'm not here to be important. I think over time, I should become less and less important, have less and less influence, and honestly, people shouldn't care what I think. They shouldn't, look to me as the leader because I'm not. In terms of like minor governance, I do have a rig. I have 1.4 gigahash, which means I'm a little minor. I don't have any governance power here. The mining community collectively does. I would love to see over time, the development community really become its own collective entity, right? Where there's robust discussion and debate, and it's not the face that wins, it's the good idea, right? Same is true with the mining community. There's a tremendous amount of governance power and, let's say, parameters that miners can tweak with, play with, adjust the system. If there's ever potential, let's say, issues that need rapid response or upgrades, I would love to see the mining community become an independent body that deals with that, right? Too often in crypto, people love to talk about decentralization, but then as soon as there's a problem, they come and are like, hey, babysitter, fix it, right? That's not the ideal that we're looking for. I think that's ultimately negative for the community. One thing that I hope I always see in the Ergo ecosystem is the ability for actors to come in with a unpopular opinion and, at least be able to have a discussion, right? I think the worst thing that can happen in a decentralized system to some degree is people aren't allowed to fight, debate, and discuss. I think that ultimately is a huge negative in terms of long-term sustainability growth and just making sure the best idea wins, right? When you get this human worship shit that we see in the space where it's like, oh, look at, I'll just use the example of Charles, right? A lot of people in the Cardano ecosystem look to Charles for answers. And, the reality is I haven't seen Charles GitHub. I'm sure he has a ton of good ideas, but he's also running a company, right? I'm sure he's constantly juggling way too many balls at the same time. So, ideally in a truly decentralized system, you become less and less important. SigmaUSD is holding up well. Under what conditions can it handle if there was a crash? You just have to look at the collateral in the treasury. It's one thing that you can look at it like static. In terms of like a number, you could say, okay, well, if the reserve ever got beneath 100%, then, obviously there's not enough backing to claim or covers the derivative, right? But it's also not a static system. You always have people that are moving into Sig Reserve and out of Sig Reserve. SigmaUSD, has proven to be relatively stable in pretty extreme conditions. Is it perfect? No. I think long term, that's something as a community. It's kind of a decentralized ecosystem. There may be some tweaks we could do to make it a little bit performant. There's been, certainly a lot of good ideas out there that have come from the community. But that's something I think should come from the community. And, I always have the question in this space, especially when it comes to this type of application. Whenever you change the rules mid-game, someone gets hurt, right? There's kind of no avoiding that. And so, sometimes when you're talking about, okay, well, what can we do to change this or update it? We should probably first consider the people that got into the game with a certain set of assumptions that we're now changing. I don't like that. I never have. I tend to be someone that leans more towards, immutability and spin up another version of it. That way, you simply don't rug someone of the assumptions that put them in the position that they were in. I struggle with that. That's a hard question, because, you do have like extreme scenarios where it's like, okay, you're kind of in the situation where it's like moral and ethical triage, meaning, at this point, something's on fire and you're just trying to put it out and say what you can. And, to some degree, I can understand that more than, it's still operating within the first set of assumptions we set. And then we're like, oh, well, let's just change it. Right. That can be like financial tinkering. And, there are victims to that. So ultimately, I can say that, but I'm just one guy in a decentralized ecosystem. I don't take my own opinion that seriously. In terms of that, I would love to see discussions and debates and kind of robust arguments, and the best ideas win, right? And I'd be happy to try to start that. But I think that collectively the community is smarter than me. So, don't look to me for all the answers. Did you start early because of daylight savings time? Yeah, I got rugged today. I started at 6 a.m. And then I learned, oh, you're going solo. So fun. Bling Kaching. It's a nice name, rolls off the tongue. Is Yoroi extension dangerous to keep Erg held in? I don't use Yoroi. I think they've not done a good job maintaining the back end of their wallet. And there are simply things with better user experience, but that's not just the case with Ergo. That's the case with Cardano as well. I don't know how many people use Yoroi anymore. In terms of dangerous, the most important thing here, and everyone please take a note, write this down. Tattoo it on your head, whatever is needed. Have best practices when it comes to custody of your private keys. That way you're not dependent on Yoroi in terms of, how well it's functioning. You have the ability to then spin up any wallet that supports the Ergo network. So please do well with your keys. That kind of rhymed. Didn't know I was going to do poetry. There you go. Wallets are more of a link interface to the blockchain. So crypto isn't exactly held in a wallet. You can just import to a better wallet. That's right. But if you're going to import to a better wallet, you better have your private keys. And sadly, we do have people that come into the support that's like, hey, I lost my keys. What can I do? I can't help you. Like, we can't help you if you lose your private keys. Really the only thing you can do at that point, if you've actually lost your keys, is say, well, at least instead of being, like lost energy at some point, it will go to miners, right? And that's sad. So please, practice kind of keeping your keys around, knowing where they are, keep them safe, don't share them. Got to be careful with a lot of links and, Google Documents, anybody that asks for your private keys, yeah, don't give them to them. Let's see. What's on the Ergo roadmap for 2023? That's actually something that we've been working with, discussing, Alex and I. I would say that's something that once we finish, we will get a update out to the community. Node 5.0 is probably the next significant upgrade. I believe we're like 25 days out, give or take, based on block time. So yeah, we have a lot coming together, and not just from the core, but at some point we have to consider community development, right? And the roadmap gets a lot more robust and complex beyond even my ability to track. It's like, when is Spectrum going to go live on Cardano, right? They have their own roadmap. As the ecosystem grows, we're going to get more and more development in parallel, and that's something that I will probably lose track of in terms of ecosystem roadmaps. But in terms of the core, 5.0 is probably the biggest. We're also working with some research and development frameworks. I would personally love to see a cookbook for layer 2 solutions and side chains. Then we get into 6.0, which I think that cookbook probably would make sense as a part of 6.0, which is focused more on scalability. Let's see. Sigma Not saying, are you aware of other crypto projects that launched as far as Ergo? My hope is that at the next bull run, people pay more attention to tokenomics and not fall for fake TVL metrics and high TPS. Yeah. There are other crypto projects out there that are, fair launch projects. In terms of what they can do and what their functionality are, I don't know. I'm too busy. I don't have time to track everything. Actually, most traders, have a broader vision than I do and are simply more aware of what's happening throughout the entire ecosystem. I'm probably the wrong guy to talk to. Okay, next question. Did you realize that Kushti's ugly pants made the market crush? No, that's a super suit. That's called the developer super suit right there. His pants in the AMA. When you see Kushti suit up and get his coffee, better watch out because things are about to go down. Next question from Blinkaching. How tall is Dan Friedman? He's pretty big guy. He's bigger than I am. Let's see. What else do we got? From Yasha Black. Is it fair to say you're disappointed with the industry because of its global mindset? I think our industry is greedy, right? And I think that greed leads people to not understand risk and make stupid choices. And then you have people that create a situation where they regret their choice. But, I have to say, okay, certainly even off chain, right? There are a ton of people that would love to take your money, right? They will love to sell you a line of just complete bullshit and take your money. Happens on chain too. So you really need to come from a point of view where you are looking to assess risk on and off chain, right? Am I disappointed that humans are greedy? No, I kind of expect them to be because it's a part of human nature. It's just a matter of saying, does that dominate you and kind of take you out of, let's say, a more balanced mindset? Just be careful with that because, problems come cheap and leave expensive, right? That's sadly just kind of the case. All right. I have no idea if this works, but would it be possible to build a DEX that miners can mine into and receive returns from their stake locked Ergo from fees? Potentially. We do have Guap Swap, which is building out something that's similar that, may be able to, be modified to some degree. You're not really swapping, you're more mining to a deposit, but you'd be mining to a wallet. Let's see. I'd have to think about that, actually. All right, next question. Hi, Joe. Would you mind reviewing the EIP voting process and how GitBlock did the voting token proof of vote? Pretty neat. Any future voting thoughts? Yeah, I know that Wilfred was working on EIP 38, which was pretty great to see. I think that whenever we get into like the complexity of governance, that's something that probably needs to start with just principles, right? And I do think that Wilfred has been a huge community asset in terms of always pushing for fair and distributed governance. I love what GitBlock did in terms of proof of vote, and having that extended or modified in any way that would give miners more of a voice versus the mining pools being so dominant. I support. I think it's a huge step in the right direction. In terms of voting out there's a lot of things that it's like voting based on position, and then I don't know, when you mix money and consensus, things can get weird in terms of governance. It's not as robust. But that's a high level problem. There's a lot of different solutions out there. Well, quadratic voting, various other things. Some people will do like a staking type of thing or activity type of thing that diminishes in time. There's a ton of kind of research, development, testing, trial and error happening in real time across DAOs. And, some of them appear to be, pretty horrible and subject to whale attacks and manipulation. Others I find more interesting. But in terms of the voting process for Ergo, I would love to see Ergo move back to more of a democratic system in terms of voting. That was one of my favorite parts of Autolicos 1. Well, it's this idea that we have a distributed set of miners and everybody kind of has their own voice. And, it's my hope that with that voice, they take responsibility and engage more in the ecosystem. Okay. There's no independent crypto expert team talking about all the shady stuff going in some projects. We need something like that. Otherwise, the projects with the best marketing and VCs will win again. Sadly, I have to kind of agree with that, it's not just what you actually build, it's the narrative and marketing that tends to dominate. Let's see. Thoughts on Singularity Net? Boon or bane for humanity? Ooh, let's see. I think that, ultimately, like, number one, having open source AI is big, right? And beyond crypto, whenever we're presented with these technologies that have such a disruptive potential, I think that needs to be the first question. Is like, oh, let's say we have, mass artificial intelligence systems. Is it open source? Let's say we have like robotic police. Is the operating system open source? Let's say we have central bank digital currencies. Are they open source, right? I think that principle needs to be kind of the first, because otherwise we have no idea, right? And so the concept of at least having a open source and democratized AI is good to start with. In terms of Singularity Net, I don't really track their development, but again, I struggle to keep up with the Ergo ecosystem. I'm buried here, so I know a lot of people are a lot more mobile and just have broader vision than I do. I might be the wrong guy to ask. So Blinkaching is asking a good question. I said if I bought Ergo on CoinX or KuCoin and moved them to Yoroi, is my private key on KuCoin or CoinX? No, it's the seed phrase that you got in Yoroi. Write those words down, keep them safe. Don't give them to anybody. You'll always get opportunity in this space, sadly, to give them away. Never do it. If you do not have your seed phrase and you still have access to your wallet, make a new wallet and save those keys and transfer it, please. And you may need to do that. Some of you out there that haven't, periodically, you may just want to do that. But yeah, please exercise responsibility in terms of custodying your own funds, because this is a bearer asset. So if you don't have the ability to sign, or someone else does, it's not yours. Joe, is it technically possible to create a decentralized exchange? To some degree. You have to ask the question, like, are there on-chain decentralized exchanges? Yes. The difficulty at this point is payment rails, right? And that gets a little tricky because you're coming from a centralized, regulated environment into a decentralized, trustless environment. And that hasn't been something that we've seen like the optimal bridge for, right? Because, you're going from a permission network to a permissionless network, and things get a little hairy there in terms of governance and legislation and compliance and all of these fun things. Are there different options where, you have like a digital asset that's backed by a real world asset, hopefully off chain? Yeah, we have those solutions, but on top of Ergo, we haven't seen that yet. And the part of that is because we're probably lacking some of the infrastructure to be able to freeze things, right? That's going to be the first thing that I imagine that type of setup would need, is a mechanism of, control for compliance. And if somebody wants to build that, I can't stop them. I'm just one guy. There are pros and cons there. It's all about trade-offs. All right. Let's see. Well, looks like everybody slowed down. Says, thank you, Joe. Have a cup of coffee. I need it. I actually brought backup coffee this time, so I'm kind of survived the hour. Thanks for spending your time this morning. I know markets are probably still on fire, and I don't know. I'll open up my phone and see what the madness is. Augustus Kent says, what's for breakfast? Some eggs, bacon, and toast. Maybe some fruit. We'll see. I'm about to find out. Have a good one, everybody.